I have been wanting to talk about the Persona series ever since I started this channel. Some of the Persona content that's already on my channel has gained more views than my average video, which pleases me because I love this series and it makes me happy to have an audience who is willing to listen. I decided I am going to do the spin-offs first because 1. The main series are RPGs which are long, and I'm busy with Xenoblade 3 at the moment. I also want to do a Live Alive review too. 2nd, Persona 4 Arena Ultimax got a re-release this year. I will be talking about the story to the first Persona 4 Arena, and while I do have it on PS3, I played through its story off of Ultimax as it was included in the re-release. And without further ado, let's start talking about the fighting game spin-off. So a little bit of development history before getting into the story. After Persona 4 was released for the PS2 in 2008, which is a couple of years after the PS3 came out, Atlus wanted to expand the series beyond just JRPGs in order to appeal to a wider audience. Some members of the Persona team were fighting game fans but lacked the experience to make a game in the genre. So Atlus decided to team up with Arc System Works, famous for Guilty Gear, BlazBlue, and Dragon Ball FighterZ, or FighterZ, whatever you want to call it. The collaboration worked out really well as the BlazBlue team were also Persona fans. The game came out in 2012 on the Xbox 360 and the PS3. And for those of you that are salty about Persona going to Xbox, yes, Persona has appeared on Xbox before. In Japan, the game was called Persona 4 The Ultimate in Mayanoka Arena. Why put the word "the" in the title? Persona 4 The Golden and Persona 5 The Royal never seemed right to me. Anyway, without further ado, let's talk about the story. Oh, and I'll be looking at the PS4 version. The story begins 2 months after the events of Persona 4. Not Golden, as Yosuke has not got his hair cut yet and Kanji does not have dark hair. Yu Narukami, who is the player character in the main game, decides to go back to the town of Inaba to visit his friends. The reason why Yu had to leave his friends in Inaba was because his parents returned from overseas. Another reason he decided to return to Inaba was because it's Golden Week, which is a set of 4 holidays during a week in which people in Japan take a vacation from their work. Nanako, who is Yu's cousin, greets him at the train station, although they grew so close in Persona 4 that she calls him Big Bro. In other words, they developed a close brother and sister relationship. Later, when they meet at the house, Yu, Nanako, Yu's uncle, and Nanako's dad, Ryotaro Dojima, all eat together. And then sometime later, in fact just before midnight, Yu stares at the blank TV in his room on a rainy night. Just as midnight hit though, an advertisement came on. The TV is off, but it just so happens the ad appeared on the TV as if it was on. It was an advertisement for a fighting tournament called the P1 Grand Prix. Yu and his friends from Persona 4 were displayed as contestants with nicknames that are, let's just say, they are not proud of. I will not repeat them, but my favorites have to be Yosuke's Captain Resentiment and Chie's Carnivore who discarded womanhood. I'll explain why Chie's embarrassing nickname is my favorite one here in just a bit, but man, do I really like how hype this announcer sounds.
The P1 Grand Prix, where fierce fights will be fought. The battle begins tonight!
Teddy appears to be the host for the tournament. What this is called is the Midnight Channel. In Persona 4, this would come on TV at midnight on a rainy night. Again, this channel shows on TVs as if the TV is on, even when it is off. I'll talk more about the Midnight Channel when I review Persona 4 Golden. Now let's rewind a bit and talk about what Yu's friends have been up to before this instance of the Midnight Channel. Yosuke is working at Junes, which is the Inaba shopping center. A mall, let's say. Chie is prepping to go for a jog and thinking about becoming a police officer. She goes out for a jog and hears a couple of girls talk about the Midnight Channel. Naturally, this piqued Chie's interest, so she tries to ask them about it, but they freak out upon seeing her and Chie could not figure out for the life of her why. Yukiko is working at the Inaba Inn cooking, which, by the way, her cooking sucks, seeing how everyone reacts to the food she makes. I'll talk more about Kanji, Rise, Teddy, and Naoto here in a bit. While everyone is excited to see Yu, they are also curious on whether or not the Midnight Channel is back. Now fast forwarding back to after the Midnight Channel display, the four decide to meet up at Junes the next day to talk about what they saw on it. The reason why I like Chie's embarrassing nickname is her reaction to it. I mean, she is a tomboy, but the fact that she has an outburst and denies discarding her womanhood is just hilarious to me. Then they decide to walk over to a big screen TV on display at Junes. By the way, this TV was used to enter another world that affects the real world. It's referred to as the TV world. Our heroes go through the TV to enter the TV world, but rather than the place they usually end up at, they instead end up in a place in the TV world where the high school they go to is replicated and they are scattered. Thus, the P1 Grand Prix now begins. Whenever two characters come together, they have no choice but to fight. Of course, Teddy would appear on a TV to say something, and Rise would also sometimes appear as a commentator. They cannot go anywhere because of invisible walls, but here's what triggers this group of friends to fight one another. They try to talk to one another, but there is this illusion that makes it to where one person would say one thing to the other person. But then when the other person hears what they said, they hear an insecurity of theirs pointed out or anything that would upset the other person when it really was not what the person who was talking said at all. So they fight each other with fists and personas. I will talk more about personas in another video, but to give a quick rundown for those of you that do not know, personas are basically guardian spirits that allow our characters access to supernatural abilities. If you are a fan of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, they are pretty similar to stands. So once the battle is over, the communication barrier lifts so the characters can talk normally. The loser is stuck in the same area because they are surrounded by invisible walls, but the winner could move on to the next round because there are no invisible walls for the winner. Several fights go on. Sometime later, our heroes would come across this Labrys character. Now let's back up a second. Who is this Labrys character? Who wins the fighting tournament and what is the prize for winning? First of all, there is no prize for winning. Something else happens instead that I'll get to in a moment. As for who wins, well, do you see this character select screen in the story mode? That depends on who you choose to play as there's not a canon victor. At least for this game's plot. Also, while on the topic, all of these character scenarios have their own introduction, but once the P1 Grand Prix comes into play, they all follow the same story beats. This is a good story, don't get me wrong, but you really only need to play through the story of your favorite Persona 4 character, your favorite Persona 3 character, and Labrys' story to get the whole story. But to get to 100% completion is exhausting. You have to play as every character, which would normally be a good thing, but you would be experiencing the same story over and over. One of the best things about the Persona series is characters interacting with each other. The interactions are different in each scenario, and while I do enjoy some of the scenario-specific interactions, the main story got old by the 4th or 5th time playing through it. Despite being good, don't forget I said that. You would also have to see each character's joke ending too, which is why I'm content with this 98% completion that I have. I did watch the joke endings on YouTube and they are pretty funny, don't get me wrong, although I do think Blaze Blue continuing Shift's joke endings are even more funny. My favorite joke ending has to be Kanji's because everyone gets mad at him for not pulling his punches because he genuinely thought the whole thing was a dream and has this super awkward moment with Naoto simply because he doesn't believe he's in reality. Speaking of Kanji, his scenario starts with him knitting a gift for you. He worked so hard that he fell asleep, woke up very clumsy like fell into the TV, entering the TV world, thus entering the tournament thinking it was a dream. Oh goodness, Kanji. He believed this was a dream for a good long while too. I don't know about you, but if I felt the impact of punches and kicks in a fight, I would immediately know it was real. Kanji, you've never had a moment in a dream where you knew you were dreaming? Dude, I have several times and even took control of my dream, therefore having a lucid dream. Now as for Teddy, well, it turns out the one hosting the tournament was a fraud and that the real Teddy was already in the TV world in a locker. The real Risei Kujikawa, not the commentator, was kidnapped and is inside the TV world to be prevented from using her persona that works like a radar for scouting where our heroes are at. Naoto gets wrapped up in a plot with the Persona 3 characters that I will talk about in a moment. Now as for who Labras is, we gotta go way back and start there. Rewinding back from the early 2010s to 1999 is where Labras' story begins. Labras is a robot built for combat by the Kirijo group. Her capabilities were tested against other robots which were her sister units. Labras, despite being a robot, is actually pretty human in terms of emotion, intellect, and will. She makes friends with another sister unit and a dog named Snowy. Labras is a character introduced in the first Persona 4 arena, so naturally the game spends quite a bit of time developing her as a character. Her friend is unit number 24, but I'm gonna keep referring to her as her friend. Her friend wants to meet a girl who these units were modeled after. Sometime later, Labras is forced to fight her friend, and then later the Kirijo group attempted to wipe Labras' memories. Labras was not having it as she made a promise to her friend to meet the girl they've been talking about. She escapes the laboratory to a beach, then decides to just let herself be captured, and then the next thing she knew, she was the president of a high school. Well, actually she believes she is the president of the school. It's the school in the TV world. Elizabeth from Persona 3 comes along and well, she has only one job in this story, and that was to tell Labras that, hey, listen, what you are believing is a lie, but whether you accept it or not is up to you. Sometime between the beach and the fighting tournament, Persona 3 characters Mitsuru Kirijo, who is part of the Kirijo group, Aigis, who is Labras' younger sister, and Akihiko, who is traveling the world training his fighting skills. The three visit Inaba to track down Labras after the Kirijo group's plane was hijacked. And thus, the Persona 3 characters go into the TV world themselves and end up participating in the tournament. Rather than the prize being lots of yen or a trip to Hawaii, the character you choose to play as fights Labras' shadow, who was shape-shifted into the false Teddy and the false Risei this whole time. Her shadow was also the one distorting the communication between the characters. A shadow in the context of Persona 4 is when someone's weaknesses, insecurities, or something they deny about themselves becomes a tangible clone of them with yellow eyes. Shadow Labras reveals to the real Labras everything she is in denial of. The fact that she is not human, and wants friends to fight each other because she wants to be understood how she felt about fighting her sisters at a younger age. Labras, who is embarrassed about these things, denies them, and the shadow becomes stronger and even more of a threat, and the winner has to fight the shadow in order to suppress it. After the fight is over, Labras gets words of encouragement from the character you are playing as, accepts herself as she really is, thus her shadow disappears, and she gets a persona. Mitsuru had plans for Labras, but after realizing surprising how human she is despite her being a machine. Mitsuru treats her closer to a person and everyone else accepts her. Basically, the antagonist of this story is not Labrys herself, but Labrys's inner demons. That's the end of the story, although another villain is teased. One who is the mastermind of the events of the story. As far as who that is, nothing is revealed here, but Ultimax is a sequel, so we'll see what that game's story reveals. I hope you guys enjoyed my plot synopsis, as next time I will be doing the story for Ultimax. Scratch that. I will be reviewing Persona 4 Arena Ultimax as a whole. Will that be 1 or 2 videos? I'm not sure. But anyway, thank you all for watching, and if you enjoyed, check out my social media, like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And I will see you guys next time.